Perfect.
Oh, there you go. Not a question, but that is the best shirt. So there you go.
Thank you. Thank you,
And
Erin.
you clearly planned it because you knew you were coming this
I
morning.
didn't. Yesterday I was like, I think I meet on the fourth Wednesday. And so I moved it back to the fourth because sometimes my calendar does that. And then I'm like, no. And so no, I forgot. So I'm glad.
It's all good. I told him about the time where I like completely blanked on it and I said, I know you're not just doing paybacks, but it is kind of funny. So anyway. Okay, so then here's a real question. I'm having a really hard time going deep in my personal reflection, both with my therapist and in journaling, to uncover some of the sources of my attachment wounds and limiting beliefs. Any advice for someone looking to go deeper? Great question, and you're asking the right person.
So I don't know if you've gotten a copy of the Finding Peace workbook. You can get that on Amazon. The first chapter is an attachment wound assessment. And so it goes over each of the 6 wounds. It asks you some questions about each one of the wounds. It gives you a perspective that a lot of people haven't thought about for each of those wounds. And that then can open up some of the sources of where their attachment wounds came from, how much it impacts their life, and those kind of things. So if that's probably where I would start. Um, we do have for the men, we do have a healing attachment wound group through Seeking Integrity that we do. Um, we also I also have uh, a free, it's called Rising, the Phoenix Rising. You could sign up for, it's like a free email. You get an email every day for 5 days, and it tells you more about that. And I do offer some other classes through Finding Peace that go into that as well. But a lot of people will use the workbook as a way to do it, and they'll go through it with their therapist. So,
And you can do that, but I will tell you, and I hear this consistently from the guys that do the work groups and women too. There's a betrayed partner work group too. Hearing someone else share something that you go, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Like it's difficult. In a therapy session, it. Let me get my thoughts together. One of the reasons Dr. Rob is so motivated by group therapy is because it reduces shame. You're having insights, you're having aha moments. You're not just single focused on something. Somebody will say something, you go, oh, hadn't thought of that. Me too. And oh, me too. So like we're similar. The ability to connect with that. So I would encourage you to do this work, not just individually, but, and I say this too, people go, oh yeah, I've, read Out of the Doghouse or whatever. And I'm like, go do the work group, because what you read, is going to be different than what you experience in those sessions. It's why, 12 step and our drop-in groups and all of those things that, provide a community and space, are so important, to the journey. So I did put the attachment wounds developing shame resilience work group. It starts again July 10th. And that's with Troy. I put that link in the uh, in the chat. Okay. How does the fabulous shirt affect your therapy protocols? This
well,
is a really good question, because like I notice if I'm wearing all black, like there's like I am paying attention to my mood. So tell me.
I wore it in group the other day, and one of my guys in group said, I can't hear what you're saying. And I said, what? He goes, I can't hear what you're saying. Your shirt's too loud. I'm like, oh, you're funny guy. Normally I don't, but today, I mean, it's getting hot in Arizona, and I didn't want to wear a freaking sweater today. So I thought, oh, I'll wear my Hawaiian shirt. And now here it is. Uh, people, people like it. So I don't think it impacts it, but it's pretty funny.
I'm not like I like bright colors, and so like it positively impacts. Like I don't have any white walls in my house. That would not be a good fit for me. So,
Mhm.
so anyway, but yeah. So other questions?
Yeah, we need questions. We ran out of all the
Yeah, we
questions
do.
last time.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but you have a women's conference coming up, don't you? Or a
We
women?
have the Empowered Women's Retreat, August 15th through 18th in sunny Scottsdale. So it will be, loving the look, Troy. It will be warm, but I used to live in Michigan, and when it's 95 degrees and 98% humidity, it's unpleasant, so I'm telling you, like, yes, it's warm, and we aren't going to be, sitting out in the sun in the middle of the day. We're going to be doing the work, and so the location is lovely, and you will be well cared for, and the healing is powerful. So yes, we have that coming up in August. But we have the online work groups. The Betrayed Partner work group, starts again May 21st. The Sex Addiction 101, starts again June 3rd. And I don't remember when Out of the Doghouse starts. That's soon. I think on a Saturday too, which we've never offered. So, if that's the right fit for you. So those, all of these components are just part of the journey. It's not, this is not a replacement for therapy. It's not a replacement for 12 step. It's just, the more you do, the better foundation you get, the more likely you are to have positive growth and healing. So, okay. I went on a vacation with a group touring car in Switzerland this weekend. I got back in 2 days. I was so anxious last night. I went into full panic, and I figured out my inner child felt so alone because of the separation. This is not the first time child got desperate, and I get desperate when she is panicking. How do I remind myself it will pass? This feels like attachment, like an abandonment wound too, don't you think? Or what are you thinking?
Yeah, well, I know that the person might not be able to answer this, but I have a couple of questions. Like, you were with a group, but did you know anybody in the group? Did you go by yourself and meet this group there? Um, so those are a couple of questions I have about that. Um, and then you, and then you felt anxious while you were there, or did you feel anxious after you came home? Like, did you feel?
It sounds like after I got home, because it says I got back in 2 days. Was I anxious? So it feels like it's the separation after being in that group situation. And they do have a continuing question: how long will this go on? When will this wound heal? So
Okay. Um, so first is to just recognize, for me, what I have clients do is recognize, okay, what's the wound that's being hit? And so it's either abandonment or some form of rejection, but probably abandonment or loss, where you felt connected and now you don't. Like that happens oftentimes when I would go to retreats. I'd feel really, really bonded and connected, and then I'd go home and it'd be hard for. I'd call it what it, the entry phase, re-entry phase is like the space shuttle coming back in through the atmosphere and it's burning up and it's hard. So part of that is that. So recognizing, okay, that's the wound, and then there's always an associated need that goes with that wound. So what is what is it that I need when my abandonment wound is being stirred up? What was it that I was getting at the vacation? And is there a way to get that here now? Can I reach out to some other people? Can I do all of those things? The panic is the root of that is fear. So what am I afraid of? And asking myself that question, it gives my prefrontal cortex a chance to start searching through this, and we connect it to the attachment wound. So what am I afraid of? Am I afraid I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life? Am I afraid I'm never going to have any buddy that's going to be there for me? You identified that your little child is panicking. So I'm wondering, so what day going to Switzerland or being in this group, how similar was that to an experience that your little one had back in the day? Is there a correlation between that? And can we revisit that experience in the past and rewrite the story with you being the adult, taking care of that little one and saying, hey, like, it's going to be all right. So those are a lot of different things that I might do. first and foremost, when a person's having a panic attack, I want them to breathe. I want to have them breathe from their diaphragm, not from up here. It's interesting. A lot of people don't know how to breathe. And so when they are breathing and they're breathing from up here, it actually exacerbates the panic. But when you breathe from your diaphragm and you are breathing deeply from like your belly, they say, and you're breathing in and out, and if you actually breathe out longer than you breathe in, what that does is it sends a message to your brain that you're not in an emergency. And so it shuts the amygdala off of hitting the panic button over and over and over again. And so learning how to breathe is really important to like start to slow the panic down, because the moment that your body goes into panic, you're going into fight or flight, and then you're not going to think rationally. So those are a couple of things that you can do, and then journal about it after. So those are some thoughts I have.
So when you're talking about, does it touch back on something? Are you thinking that the ending of the trip touched on something, or are you talking about it touching on like the great community thing that happened in the group?
Yeah, so either having like trying to think of something similar, like I was, I had a lot of I went to this group when I was a kid. I went to summer camp and it was super fun, and I met a best friend, and then I came home and I never saw that person again, and not really recognizing how much that hurt because I didn't pay attention. But now as I'm sitting with it, I'm like, yeah, I really miss that, for example. Or I never, like, all my friends would go and onto these trips and stuff, and my parents could never afford it, so I couldn't go. And so, just the thought of I actually got to do something for once, and now it's over, and the loss of that, those are just some different scenarios that might connect. But it's just like, okay, so my little one is freaking out, my little inside person is hurting. What does this remind her of? And asking her, she'll probably tell you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I was thinking too, when you're talking about the breathing, I had mentioned at the Empowered Women's Retreat, we do a breathing exercise. It is not just mindfulness breathing. It is a technique that takes you to a completely different layer. And it just is fast, and it's guided and very structured. So don't, it's not like, but it was amazing to see how powerful that was. And I'm like, it's just breathing. Like, it's just crazy. But you're right. Like, most of us don't really pay attention to our breathing or grounding to calm down. So okay, the next one. My partner and I keep triggering each other's most painful wounds. I find it really difficult to ground before responding when we have tough conversations. What tools can I use in this moment?
Okay, I just learned this one. So I'm gonna do my best to walk you through it. It's a grounding tool. So if you know how to do Kegel exercises, um, it's basically you're tightening your bottom, the muscles at the bottom of your body. Like, the easiest way to say it is like if you're going to the restroom and you're peeing and then you squeeze the muscles, you can stop the pee from going out. Um, so there's lots of benefits to doing Kegels, but that's not what this is about. So what I'm going to have you do, y'all can do it with me, okay? So
Mhm.
what I want you to do is I want you to just squeeze that muscle as tight as you can. And then as you're doing that, you're going to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth using your belly. And you're going to do that for just a couple of breaths, like 4 or 5 breaths. And then you're going to release it by 50%. And then breathe about 4 or 5 breaths. And then release it again by 50%. Breathing in and out. And then finally just let it go. I'm curious if anybody did that, what their experience was like doing that. It's actually a grounding tool. It's a way to help. I'm not into all the chakra stuff. I mean, there is some science around it, but I'm not that. But that's considered the root chakra, which we get grounded there. So, but what I read about, and as I learned about this, is that when somebody's in a conflict, they can do that. But it took 30 seconds at best. They could do that. And what it's doing is it's getting themselves grounded, and then they're in a much better state. Number one, we started breathing, right? So we're bringing blood to our prefrontal cortex, but we're also getting grounded. So then I'm not reacting to whatever it is that is happening when my partner bumps up against one of my wounds. So that what the woman who taught me, and I gotta go find her name, but what she said was that a lot of people found that to be really helpful in getting away from the fighting that they would do as a couple. Just doing that for a few 30 seconds to a minute. You can ask your partner, hey, give me a minute. I need to breathe. I don't want us to go into that spiral thing that we always go into, because it never ends well. So give me a second. Can I breathe? Would you like to breathe with me so that we don't,
That's what I was thinking. I was
right?
like, if they're both getting triggered, like how much more settling to like if we went, okay, we're triggering each other, we're getting triggered, all of this is going badly. I need to ground. But if you talk about it in advance and say, next time this happens, and it will, could we do a breathing grounding exercise together?
Mhm.
Are we willing to commit to that? And then have a discussion about whatever the topic is. But I was thinking that it's like co-regulating in a
Yeah.
positive way. I'm regulating and co-regulating. So yeah.
So the other part, one of the things I teach in my relationships class is, so what is your intention um, going into this conversation? And oftentimes our intention is really good, and then it will shift really quickly. So I want to be able to talk about this and have a loving conversation, and I want to be able to hear my spouse and understand what's going on with my partner, and I want my partner to understand me, and we'll be more connected. And that's what I go into. And then 2 minutes later, I want to win. I want to be right. And so all my intention just flew out the window. So reminding myself, finding a way to ground myself and say, okay, what do I want? What do I really want? I want to be able to talk about this and not get in a fight. I got to remind myself, oh, I notice my body's doing this thing. So breathe. Let me take a step back. I can even say, hey, I notice I'm reacting. We don't ever say, I notice you're
Hmm.
reacting, because that doesn't
Hmm.
work so well. I know I'm
That
reacting,
will get a reaction.
right? I notice I'm having some energy. Uh, this is not going where I wanted it to go. Can I try again? So those are
Yeah.
some.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that you're asking this question, because I hear the intention is we want to do things differently, and that doesn't work. I mean, it's like nothing progresses. You guys get really stuck, everybody does. Everybody gets stuck if you're just repeating these patterns that are not moving forward. So I love what Troy was talking about. What is the intention? And if the intention is to connect with each other, and problem solve together, and I like that term, because if I'm problem solving, then I'm looking for solutions, and I'm not just trying to win. I'm going like, what's going to work? It's navigating it's not my way or the highway. It has to be, how can we move this forward together, where we both feel heard, respected, and all that, and solution oriented. So, okay, the next one. What role does affirmation from others play in healing personal attachment wounds? How can I learn to accept others' positive praise? Well, that's a great question too.
Okay. So affirmations go can go really well in helping us heal our attachment wounds. So there's a couple of principles, and the next person's question, um, I'll go into that a little bit deeper.
Okay.
But the every attachment wound has some negative core beliefs that have been woven into the pain of it as a way of trying to explain what's going on. So when for example, if I have a rejection wound, one of the negative core beliefs that I will probably have is that there's something wrong with me, right? And I fundamentally believe that there's something wrong with me when that rejection wound keeps being hit. So then somebody comes over here and gives me a positive affirmation. I'm going to have a really hard time taking that in because inside I don't believe that's true. And so the person will give me affirmations and I will reject it. So it's weird because I'm rejecting them because I have a rejection wound. So people, that gets old after a while. Like if I'm giving you a compliment and you keep rejecting it, I'm going to probably stop giving you one because it's driving me nuts that you're not willing to do that. The reason why you're not able to do that though is shame. And shame plays a tremendous role in dealing with all of that stuff. So what I've learned is that I have to be vulnerable. And so there are times when I really am feeling like crap, feel like I've made mistakes, I'm not enough. And during those times, I'll call somebody and say, look, my shadows of shame have been telling me this and this and this. In fact, just yesterday, I left a Marco Polo for my friend Matt, and I said, just so you know, this message has been brought to you by the impotent one and the judge because it's all whining and complaining. But then I say, what I really need to hear right now is that you see me, that I'm enough. So I've learned how to ask for that on one hand, and then I've also had to learn how to do that for me. So there's there's a lot that's packed into this question. Seeking affirmation can be really helpful if you're not doing it passive aggressively. And the way you learn how to accept it is by working through your shame, developing shame resilience.
Passive aggressive, yeah, but I think the key, like you're talking about, is like I have to believe, like I have to be willing to accept them. And like one of the hard, well, there was a lot of hard when I was in treatment, but when I was in treatment, my therapist, you know, made me, that's how I feel. I don't know exactly how it was put to me, but it was like I had to stand in front of a mirror and say positive things, about myself, and like, that I was lovable, and that I was worthy of love. I don't even remember what all it was, around that kind of stuff. And it was hard as heck, but the more I practiced it, and I started to internalize that. But and it's hard on either side of the coin. I know, for addicts, when we have this false facade, like we know how, all the underlying stuff is, and we have this facade of, I hear this all the time from partners too. It's like, and I'm going to use genders, but everybody in the community thinks he's great. They don't see what he's doing here. And that's the trick for addicts, is we know we have this facade. So how can we possibly, if they knew what we were really like, they wouldn't really like us. That's it, the whole, stuff. So yes, learning to be esteemable, and regardless, I think every human being is deserving of love and to be lovable, and we can work towards having, our behaviors align with all of that. So, but yeah, it's kind of hard. You got to start with, I have to be, I have to know that I have intrinsic value, and, I can do things that will help me feel better about myself, and I can do things that'll make me not feel as good. But at the end of the day, as a human being, I have worth. So the next one you said you're going to refer to, I'm new to this group, have been struggling with chemsex for the last few years, and was referred to a podcast by Dr. Fawcett, who is on the second week. He'll be on next month on the second week. Would you be willing to give an overview of attachment wounds? And yes, he is.
I
And
totally.
and then he also has a Friday group for guys, a drop-in group, and goes over more. So, but here's the overview.
Yeah. So as human beings, we're wired for connection biologically, neurologically, socially, spiritually, energetically. We are wired to be connected. You literally are connected to your mother for 9 months before you're born. And then when things happen in life, and they usually do, that does something to disrupt those connections or hamper them or sever them completely, it can cause us some intense pain. And then depending on how we deal with that pain, depending on how often that happens, or how big that experience was, it can create what I call attachment wounds, where that wound, it's like somebody in a bed, and they're sick, and the pressure on that part of their body, and they don't get turned, eventually that's going to turn into a wound. Pressure also, they call this. So we have those. We can have all six. We can maybe have one or two, but the challenge is that nobody sees them. Nobody knows that they're there. We don't even know that they're there, really. But we know that we react when somebody bumps up against them. So it's like if you had a sunburn and somebody came up and bumped you, when you have sunburn, you react. It hurts, you pull away, and that's what happens with these too. So there are six wounds. Loss happens when you've had a loved one pass away, or your best friend moved across the country, or there was something in your life and then it went away. Usually there's some closure around that, or you understand why, but it still hurts. Neglect happens when your needs are not being met. Your emotional needs a lot of times are not being met, but sometimes physical needs, where mom and dad are too busy, or they're doing things, focusing on themselves instead of really attending to you when you are hurting. And so you can develop a neglect wound. Rejection happens when you're told by others that you're not enough, that there's something wrong with you, you don't belong in this group, you have cooties, you suck, we don't want you in this group. That's rejection. Abandonment is when somebody walks out of your life and there's no closure, there's no explanation. They were there and then they're gone, and you don't know how to get a hold of them. You don't understand why they left. I can't. Lots of people have had either a mom or a dad leave when they were kids, and they don't know why. So that's an abandonment wound. Betrayal, when somebody does something that violates your trust. You thought you could trust this person, and then they did something that violated that trust. They lied to you, they cheated on you, they kept things from you. And then the last is abuse. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, where somebody's own woundedness drives them to inflict pain on you. So those are the six attachment wounds, and they they're at the foundation of the work that I do with people. So a couple of things with them, it helps me put words to what's happening to me or why I'm reacting the way that I do. And it also helps me know that I can do wound care and start to take care of these wounds and help them heal, so they're not so tender, and I don't react as strongly as I did before. So hopefully that's helpful.
Well, it is. And for me, like having the words to use rather than going to like I felt it. So having the ability to go, oh, that's my abandonment when getting poked, like that is hugely beneficial, because then I can go, oh, it's getting poked, and I can choose to do something else rather than, just struggling with the dysregulation of the feelings that are coming up in the moment. So I appreciate you sharing, and your shirt looks really good with your graphics. So
Thank you.
just saying. Okay. I've heard you say before that unlike in IFS, that's internal family systems parts work, you don't see the shadows of shame as being part of us. Are you able to expand on that idea a little? I found it very confusing to try to imagine a voice in my head as not being part of myself.
Well, that's so there are a lot of overlap. And honestly, I didn't know about internal family systems when I started, when I did this. And then after, I'm like, oh, I can see that there's some overlap with that. The difference is that and maybe they do this in IFS, I don't know, but the difference is that I want you to take that voice out of your head and put it in the room. So yes, when you very first start to understand the shadows of shame, and I'll sometimes refer to them as the voices in your head, but I want you to take them out and put them in the room. And I want you to imagine what the judge looks like or what the impotent one looks like. And part of that is I want you to recognize that that is simply a defense mechanism that your brain developed, and it's not you. You are a being of light. You are a being of love, and you are wired for connection. You you were made for a purpose. There's a reason why you're on this planet. That is you. Fundamentally, that's you. These shadows of shame have become ways of protecting you in really crappy ways, protecting you from pain. And they do it in a really shameful way. So I actually had an interview with a guy who does IFS and introduced him to the shadows, and he could see the difference. And he's like, do you think that it's possible to eventually get rid of the shadows of shame? And I said,
Mm.
that's a really interesting concept. And he goes, because as you said, they're really not you. And they have dark energy as much as they um, try to help you. This dark. And so I thought, with enough love and enough light, the shadows go. So that is possible. And I don't know if you can do that with your parts work, like get rid of that part of you. Some of it's integrated, but I'm not trained in IFS, so I'm not an expert on that. I just am an expert on the shadows of shame part. So what I want you to do is take whatever that shadow is out, and there's a couple ways that I have people do that. Have them write a letter to you, or imagine what they look like, so that you start to create a gap between you and that shadow of shame, and recognize like that is not me.
I was thinking it like there's one situation that comes up for me and I like it's actually somebody else's. I've internalized that person's voice, like you know a family member, but like I was like, oh yeah, that's I know where that comes from, but it's helpful again to put it out there and go, yep, that's that voice, and I don't have to internalize it. I love what you're talking about though too with can you eventually get rid of it? So far hasn't completely gone away, like I still get, but man, like yeah, they're not as dark, like you said, the dark energy, like easier to recognize and quicker to be able to do something to shift things, which I mean that's a gift in and of itself. I'm still human and have bandwidth at varying lengths depending on what's going on and all that. And sometimes I mean we've had people say hurtful things, and to not have it be like, oh, it's about me, it's not personal, and to be able to get to that spot is can be challenging depending on where I'm at. So but I it's a goal worth striving for, is to
Mm-hmm.
not get caught up in that. Okay, Troy, the next one. My husband and me are separated for a few months now because he had a relapse and did not tell me within 24 hours, as agreed on my boundaries. At at the beginning, it was very hopeless, depressed, and disappointed, and I'm very hyper vigilant. Now I feel like I don't really care what he is doing. My question is, am I being a martyr, or is this just normal behavior to become indifferent?
Um, I can't say whether you're being a martyr, but my sense is you're not letting the martyr voice take over. What the martyr tells you, that's a shadow of shame. What the martyr tells you is that your needs don't matter and that his needs matter more than yours. And so you need to sacrifice yourself for the greater good. And I'm not picking up on that with this situation. What I am hearing is that you are not taking it personally anymore, which is beautiful, because him acting out really has nothing to do with you. And so you're at a point where, like, dude, you got to figure this out. Like, you're not being on, you're not open and honest, and you're not following through within 24 hours. And that really is damaging your credibility. And I'm to the point where I'm I'm gonna keep doing me, and maybe you'll figure out how to do you. Uh, Still care about you as a person, but I'm starting to learn that your behavior is not really does not define who I am. and I'm still enough, and I'm worthy of love and belonging, and I hope you figure it out. So that's where I'm hoping you're going, and that's what I picked up from that question. So um, it the indifference doesn't mean that you don't care. The indifference is that you're not taking it personally anymore.
So I put in the chat, Dr. Rob talked about indifference on the Monday night webinar, maybe worth, checking out. But yeah, I'm proud of you. You held healthy boundaries for you, and the hypervigilance. I often say to like it steals all the joy from a partner's life if all of the focus is on my day is only going to be okay if he does or doesn't do whatever it is. Like, Debbie McCrae has shared on webinars too, same link, you'll find them, externally focused boundaries, or internally focused boundaries. And so I hear that you held the boundary for what you need, and boundaries are not control or punishment. It's like you are not safe. You didn't step into the space in a trustworthy way. You didn't show up and say, yeah, I messed up. So good for you for holding boundaries. Like, I hear self-care on that one. Okay, next one. My husband and I struggle with stating our needs when doing our daily check-ins. Any insight on needs would be helpful. I think we both grew up ignoring our needs, so it's hard to know what our needs are. It's easy for us to say, I need to drink more water, exercise, sleep, etc., and easy to name our need to do our to-do list, but hard to say what I need. Any insight would be appreciated.
So I'm guessing that y'all are using the Fanos check-in, and
Mhm.
the N in Fanos stands for needs. So let me pull up the.
I had somebody to talk about this, and he was like, I have no needs, and I was like, can
Oh,
you go with it would be nice, like he was okay with that, and I said, still four letters, and it's still an N, but it would be nice if whatever. And so,
yeah.
but yes, please, thank you, this is awesome, and
Okay.
it matches your shirt still, so
No,
good.
these colors. So two ways to figure out what your needs are. First is to figure out what your wound is, and then figuring out what the opposite of that is. So, for example, if my wound is rejection, probably what I need is acceptance. If my wound is neglect, probably what I need is attention. If my wound is loss, probably what I need is some comfort. If my wound is abandonment, I need someone to be there, presence. So that's one way to figure that out. The second way is I came up with 8 core needs that I'm sure there's more than that, but here's some right here. And whenever I get to that part, when I'm walking people through the Finding Peace worksheet and we get to the needs section, I'm like, okay, what are your needs? And inevitably, about 95% of the time, they tell me what they need to do. And I'm like,
Oh,
no,
interesting.
I don't want to know what you need to do. Well, I need to really pray harder, or I need to be nicer, or no, stop. I don't need to know what you need to do. I want to know what you need. And that's hard for most people, just like you said, like, I don't know, never figured that out. So here's a list of the needs. You could do a screenshot or something and figure that out. But so today, as I'm sitting and I'm checking in with you, what do I need? I need some acceptance. I need to hear that you accept me even though I'm struggling. My shadows of shame have been beating me up a lot, and I just need to know that you believe in me because I'm having a hard time believing in me. I need some attention and some presence. I need to know that you're there. So can we find a way to spend some time later and just to spend some time doing something? I need growth. I need I need a chance to grow here. So I want to, and then fill in the blank. I need autonomy. I feel so smothered and feel like I'm so having to sit there and do everything for everybody else. And so I need a time for me to be able to make some of my own decisions for me. So those are some examples of what that might look like. And and then asking. like you said, like it would be nice if you could. So if I'm telling you I need assurance, then I would probably also say, and this is what it would look like. Or if I
Yes, I was gonna say that's key because otherwise it's like, well, I'm giving you assurance. Well, that's, like there can be a disconnect of what I think I'm giving you and what you're hearing or feeling. It's like the languages of love. Everybody has a kind of a different language. So what it's going to look like to you, and with the autonomy, I was thinking, like I think I hear a lot with betrayed partners that they feel completely overwhelmed and overloaded. So I could see autonomy of being like, I just need to take care of me, could be a huge one, for them too. So yeah, good stuff. Okay. Which attachment wound do you usually see when a person has unpredictable mentally ill parents? I'm having trouble pinpointing what root wound I might be experiencing from the chaos and unpredictability.
um right off the top of my head, neglect. If your parents were so mentally ill that they were dealing with their own problems and there was a lot of chaos, chances were that even your basic needs might not have been met. That sometimes like, let's say that you were supposed to bring your lunch to school. So there were probably some times that your parents didn't make lunch, and so you had to go to school hungry, or you needed some clothes or new shoes, and it took them 4 months to get you new shoes because they were too busy dealing with their own stuff. So that's an example of that. Or emotionally, like mom is having a freak out session, or dad is like been out drinking for a while and he comes home and he's abusive, and then mom's dealing with that, and I'm scared, I'm terrified. Did anybody take care of me and help me feel safe? No. So that's a neglect wound there. Depending on the type of mental illness and how your parents dealt with that. Like, I know a lot of parents who are mentally ill who say really nasty things to their kids. And so there's a rejection wound. My mom's rejecting me and telling me that I'm a piece of crap and she wishes that I was never born. Like, there's that. Or betrayal. Your parents promise to do something. Dad's promising you that he's gonna take you and buy a bike, and he keeps telling you that and he never does. Betrayal, that kind of stuff. So that might give you some ideas of what wounds you might have.
Yeah, well, I suspect neglect for sure. In the chat, I threw Dr. Enid Gray wrote a book, Neglect the Silent Abuser, and she did a podcast with Dr. Rob on sex, love, and addiction. And it's not child protective services neglect. It's like all of those things, like just that Troy just mentioned. So you may find that another framework of, because it's easy to go, I wasn't abused, like, or neglected. And you go, oh, wait, yeah, there was some of that there. So, okay, here's a good question. Not that they're all not good questions, but this is about shame. Isn't there a good part of shame? After all, the huge majority of these partners have done things that are shameful by any account. How do you treat it in a positive way while knowing that their actions are horrifying and shameful?
So there used to be a term, David Bradshaw, that's his name, right?
John Bradshaw.
John Bradshaw, would use the term healthy shame. But then when Brene Brown did her research, she discovered there is nothing healthy about shame. But what John Bradshaw was talking about was guilt, um, which is like knowing that my behavior has an impact on other people and it causes them harm. And I feel really bad about that. And I don't want to continue to cause harm anymore. And so that is actually a really healthy feeling, even when somebody might have had no shame when they were behaving the way that they were behaving back in the day. And now they are growing and they're learning, and they realize like my actions really did impact other people. What I'm hoping they go to is guilt. what I'm hoping they don't go to is shame. Because what shame does is makes it all about me. Well, I'm a horrible person, and I never got it. I could never do anything right, and I'm never going to be able to make any amends here, and I should probably just die, and you'd be better off without me. That's all shame, which is not healthy and not helpful either. Guilt is, wow, I can really see that what I did hurt you so much. And my heart breaks that I have done those things. And I want to make amends if I can. I want to be able to figure out how to repair the breach that has been made, because I don't want you to suffer anymore. And I know that I need to heal by making amends for that, which is what's beautiful about the 12 steps when we get to the amends part. Um, so, you know, we we've used the expression you ought to be ashamed of yourself, and I think what they're saying is like, how could you do such a thing? Could you not see that your actions actually impact somebody else? But shame does not motivate change. It might for a moment, but not long term. So for me, shame, as much as it's a part of our life, there's not a whole lot that's positive about it. And in fact, it continues to unravel connection faster and faster the more that it's a part of our life.
Yeah, and I agree. Shame is a useless emotion, and even in the example you were giving, it's self-centered. Oh, I'm so horrible. So this focus is still on me. Oh, I'm, rather than, gosh, my behaviors were awful, and I'm going to work to change things. And I can see how that has negatively impacted, my partner, my loved ones, my coworkers, whatever. And resentments and shame, and I'm not making excuses. It's just, but those are high probability relapse things. The more those are uncomfortable things, and so it's easy to go back to the maladaptive coping mechanism of acting out rather than continue to do the work to reduce the shame and live in a different way. So yes, and I hear and I know, and I get, partners are like, it was so shameful of you, but going back to what Troy said earlier, if what you're looking for is healing in the relationship, for an addict to take accountability for their problematic behaviors and be on a different path, then we have to look at things differently, and not just keep the shame spiral going. Okay, so the next one is, how do I respond when my husband repeatedly uses shame and core wounds as an excuse for not showing up in the relationship, even though avoidance was also for treating me poorly in different covert ways? He will apologize and say he's taking ownership when confronted with these behaviors, but yet they continue daily. He insists on saying he is not good enough and can't seem to separate these behaviors from any positive feelings about himself. I try to clarify that I see him separately from his behaviors. Great question.
Um, I'm gonna be him or a version of him, and then I want you to tell me how you feel when I do that, and then we'll try something different. Okay. You probably want to just divorce me. Like I just don't know if I have it in me. I mean, I'm trying to take ownership for the things that I do, but I'm just, I don't think I'm cut out for this, and I'm not good enough. And I'm a piece of shit of a husband, and I just keep messing up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm trying though. I'm trying.
Now, some partners might go to the, oh, I feel so bad for you and I want to rescue you. I don't, you know, I'm going like, no, you need to do some work on
Yeah.
those. Like, yeah, like that would be, you know, you are not my problem. You need to go step up your work. We have a treatment program for guys like this, and Dr. Rob actually does. This is one where he'll confront a bit on the, no, you're all self-focused on this, and even the trying, I don't quote Lord of the Rings and all that stuff. I don't quote Star Wars, but this is do or not do. There is no try. Like at some point, Now there are some things that I changed it, but like, like if what you're doing isn't enough to change things, you're just struggling with, you partner are hearing this on a daily basis. I mean, so what healthy boundary do you have in place? It'd be like, yeah, time out. You go, like, I'm gonna go take care of me. You can wallow in this, and it's not changing anything for him. And I
Yeah.
can only imagine how painful it is for you to be going, gosh, this guy is completely stuck. So,
When her last sentence, I'm assuming it's a she. I tried to clarify to him that I see him separately
yeah.
from behavior. Well, I love that you're trying, and it's not going to work because his shame is like this wall of concrete that's around him, and so he rejects it. He rejects it immediately. So, one of the things that really helped me when I was doing this kind of stuff is the marriage counselor said, Troy, that's not attractive. Troy, Troy, that shame stuff you're doing, that's not very attractive. You might want to try a different tactic. And I was like, what? I thought it made me look. And she was like, nah, that that's not attractive. That's not, that doesn't turn anybody on. You might want to deal with your shame. So you could say that, "Hey, honey, your shame showing. You might want to go do something about that because I can't have a conversation with your shadows right now."
Well, and then so the next one is when you talk about um, these shaming statements, is there a way to redirect others towards a healthier sense of guilt?
So okay, if I'm in shame, I'm probably not going to hear anything you say. So that's
Mm,
a challenge because I'm making it all about me. That's what my shame does.
hmm.
All about me, and I'm a horrible person, and blah blah blah. However, if you are trying to help me understand how it's impacting you, what you do is you talk about how the behavior impacts you, not what a piece of trash I am, but when you told me that you hadn't acted out, and then it turns out that you did, that really hit my betrayal wound, and I'm shattered. And the stories that I tell myself are that this is never going to get any better. I'm not sure I can trust you, and I'm hurting. I'm aching inside. My heart is breaking, and I'm scared and I'm worried. If I am notice I'm owning all that. Now, if I'm hearing that and I can actually let it in, there I have two paths at that point. One is to go to shame. Well, yeah, I'm a horrible husband, can't do anything right, blah, 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 throw up. Or I'm like, whoa, I can see that my behavior really had an impact on you, and I want to change that. But you can't make me go into a sense of guilt. But you can share how my behaviors impact you, and you take ownership of how it hurts you, and don't make it about me. And that can shift things better than if you make it about me and what a piece of trash I am. I'll just use that to build my fire of shame over here.
Yeah, and I was wondering, like not in the moment, but like when it's not just going like, like we're on this not fun merry-go-round, and like, are what are you willing to do to be on a different path? Because this isn't working, and I'm gonna, for my healthy boundaries, when if you choose to have a pity party for you, then I want to step away and take care of me, I mean, whatever it is, but
Yeah.
like not in that moment. Now I could see the first thing, oh, going right back into the pity party, I mean, it's challenging stuff, but part of recovery is we own our behaviors and we're stepping into emotional maturity a little at a time, so that we can tolerate, uncomfortable feelings. I've told two people in the last week or so, I honestly don't know anybody who has died of a feeling, like I just don't, like, they're uncomfortable, of course. And, but they are not terminal and fatal. And so, like, yes, we can sit in an uncomfortable feeling, and hopefully it motivates us. What do we need to do? Like you talked about, you made a phone call, because you were not feeling great in that moment. you know. I've done the same thing to Troy. I reached out, and very, you know what? And then I was like affirmed, and I needed affirmation in that moment, and he provided it. And so thank you, Troy. But
Mhm.
and then we move on.
I would say this, like when I was going to my EMDR training, like if you have to remember that shame is a result of trauma. Like it's because we're hurting. And so when I was doing my EMDR training, we were talking about how trauma is often related to people who've done some horrible things. And we do the EMDR to help reprocess their brain and their trauma. And then they actually have the ability to take ownership of their behavior. So part of working through the shame is doing our trauma work. And I believe that when that is possible and people can work through that, and then they don't carry around that shame anymore, and they can actually make changes and improve relationships. So there's
But
hope.
and it's also connection, like we talk about in treatment, when I'm, if I'm sitting there sharing, about, oh, I'm so horrible and all that, first of all, other people are going to go, well, I did the same thing, or I did the same, or no, you're not, whatever it is. And and that's true of drop-in groups and 12 steps and whatever. It's, we don't heal in isolation, so we need connections with other people that can help validate, reframe, mirror, whatever it is that we're dealing with, and give us options, to move forward differently. you know I always say, this is 12 step, our best thinking gets us, to the place that we're at. So we are not going to think our way out of doing the same things that we've done before. So we do need others. Somebody did ask about Thanos or
Oh,
check-ins. And so I put there's a link to the Thanos check-in. It's just one. There are other ones, but it's, and Troy can elaborate on this too. Not everybody's ready for this, like right off the bat. Like so timing, and how often you do it, whether it's daily. If people go, well, we tried to do it every day and it didn't. Well, okay, then do something different. But and it isn't just accountability. It is, isn't like, well, you're going to tell me what you've been doing. It's connection and communication, and make up your own little check-in, and it's a couple of minutes. I've heard people doing, like, it takes us an hour, like I and then they quit because it took an hour. So what are
yeah.
your thoughts on a
Well,
check-in?
I tell people don't do it, should not take it longer than 10 minutes. If you're dragging this out for longer than 10 minutes, your husband's not going to want to do it. Because he's wallowing in shame and he's not going to be able to tolerate it. I had this insight just yesterday about it. When I do a group, I have everybody check in first, and the check-ins in my group are about a minute long. I don't want people to go on and on and on and on. Um, but part of what I'm doing while they're checking in is I'm getting a clue of, like, where are they emotionally, what is it that they want to work on, is there stuff that I want to be able to follow up with in group. And that's kind of the same concept when we're doing check-in with our partner. Like, okay, I'm just getting a pulse of what's going on, I'm sharing what's going on with me, and you're going on with you, and then later we can follow up with that. We might even say, hey, so can we revisit this part of the check-in later tonight? Because I really feel like I need to focus on that. But we don't do that at the time of Thanos. That's really hard for some people because they're like, their anxiety kicks in and they want to. But just using that as a taking the pulse of what things are going on, and then by all means you can follow up later. But keep that separate so that it's something that actually can be positive, because if it's not, it's not going to be sustainable. So
Well, and I had a partner say, I always have to, remind. And I was like, oh, hey, we have these things called phones with calendar reminders. And it's an agreement that we're going to show up at 7 o'clock at the kitchen table or whatever it is. And we both show up, and
yeah,
like like, this is not supposed to be, come here, be a good
but you
boy or
don't
girl,
want to be the
so,
mommy, right? That's annoying.
right.
I tell
Yeah.
people, find a time that works. Like, try it in the morning.
Yes.
If it doesn't work in the morning, find it in the afternoon or in the evening. One couple I know, they do it. It's just them. They don't have any kids, but you could do this with your kids too. You probably wouldn't talk about, acting out during that time, but during dinner, because they usually eat dinner together. So they do the check-in during dinner. And so they normally eat dinner together. So they normally check in. So
What a
make,
great idea too. And then, I mean, like that's just, but you're paying attention to your kids and you're not just like looking at phones or talking about, irrelevant things. So yeah.
yeah,
And that's the point of a check-in is like, I want to connect. I want to communicate. I want, and it's a pretty low threshold way, a couple of minutes, to just connect. And, then you can start scheduling the more difficult conversations about, oh, that's when we should, we schedule a time to talk about and problem solve together. So
yeah.
anyway, okay. Well, thank you all for the great questions. Thank you, Troy, for showing up. Really
Oh, I'm so
appreciate it.
bad. Whew. It's all
So
good.
Dr. Eddie will be on next week, and I put a link. Troy's next attachment wound work group is posted on the Seeking Integrity site. He has the Betrayed Partner group tomorrow, right? For a drop-in group, and then the Friday morning group with the guys. So Troy is very active on our site. Check in with any of those resources. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.